Now, it is no news, it is no surprise in terms of the indiscipline cases spread across public institutions, especially high schools in our country. We've seen the cases of infernos. We don't know the cause yet, but in some cases, such as the Kakamega school, we saw parents actually told to pay around 9,823 shillings due to the damage that was caused by the fire. The court pronounced itself on this matter, so parents have no option but to pay. But we try and delve into the nitty-gritty details. Why are these cases happening? And interestingly, they don't seem to be happening in private institutions across the country. So is there a thing that these private institutions are doing that we need to emulate as public institutions, perhaps when it comes to talking to the students, when solving conflicts? We'll try and delve deeper into that, and I'm joined in studio by a stakeholder as such. Jasper Ondimu is not a new face to the station right here, well-able teacher, but I refer to him as an educationist due to his adverse influence in matters education. Asante for your time and good morning.
Thank you, Jesse, for having me.
Well, we'll get to discuss more, but let's just take a look at this particular story that was prepared by a reporter, Shadrach Miti, just highlighting the cases of school indiscipline in the country. Now, get this, the fire, menace and destruction of properties in our schools has seemingly failed to go away time and time again. Now, we have the government mulling over the option of reintroducing caning in schools. But will that work? That's a big question right now. But interestingly, the problem only seems to affect public schools. So the big question is, what is it that private schools are doing right, and what is it that public schools are getting wrong? Shadrach Miti explores. Take a look.
From Kakamega to Maranda to Buruburu and Odhaya, students in public secondary schools have been on the rampage, and the school fires are not about to get extinguished. And while all this happen, parents, school managers, well-wishers and guardians bear the brunt of unruliness. But why are the fires mostly in public schools and not private schools? Northgate School in Comahil, Machakos County is a mixed boarding secondary school. It is a value-based school whose teaching and learning processes focus on the character development of the learner. And whereas the school principal, Emily Maina, admits students here, just like their peers in public schools, to have challenges, they have a structured way that allows students to freely express themselves, while at the same time exhaustively attending to their needs.
It is a responsibility of the parent. The first teacher that a child has is the parent. So when we take the child in the school and the parent is not part of what we are doing in the school, then there is a disconnect. And like we draw from the Bible, it is the parent that was given the responsibility of bringing up their child. So as a teacher, I'm only coming in to add to what the parent has built. So that which the parent is doing at home, which is correct, I build on that. So the expectation is that we build on the foundation that was set by the parents. And so they have to come on board so that together we work in the development of their child. And generally, when God gave that child to that parent, it is them that are supposed to know what is this child becoming. So mine is to step in and partner with them and make them become exactly what they were meant to become. So we believe we are partners with parents. So when one party is not involved in the process, we are bound to lose.
Professionals have pointed out that whatever that is happening in schools has a direct correlation between upbringing, parenting, and character development. There have been arguments that parents have failed to actively and responsibly take up their parenting roles. Meanwhile, teachers have been accused of failing to manage the learners. Yet, private schools seem to have a totally different perception and approach. And their approaches are paying off.
When we admit students in Northgate School, we admit both parent and student. And we are very careful to begin a process, a journey with the parents as well as the students, so that we have a journey that we call the Northgate process, where parents become a part of the school. Before we can admit your child, you're already part of the school, and you begin a journey so that whatever it is that we want to put inside your child, we already put it inside of you, so that what is it that we are telling your child, so that that which we are telling your child becomes a part of you. When we build it in the school, it is also built back at home, so that there is harmony, there is seamlessness inside of the building of a child.
While stakeholders in public schools remain engaged in fierce blame game of who between teachers and parents is responsible for the indiscipline and other wayward actions by students, private schools have a different thinking and approach altogether. Free channels of communication among learners, parents and school managers has always played the magic.
Whatever happens at home, sometimes it comes to school, because these kids will come back to school and you can tell something needs to be fixed in this child. Something could be happening back at home. It is very interesting because you'll discover parents also come and say, while school was closed, we experienced this, there was this traumatic experience at home, and we would love the school to know, so that as you journey with our son and our daughter, this happened, and we are managing it this way. So we allow our students and their parents to talk. We allow them to call home. Every time they feel they have a need to discuss something with their parents, we have a number of lines. They can come, call at lunchtime, call after classes, and their weekends also. The weekends, we allow parents to come and see their children. We allow them to come, and sometimes they would want to go out and sit somewhere and just have a talk.
Previous task force reports on school unrest recommended for the establishment of fully functional guidance and counseling departments in schools. And the government has not actualized this proposition in public schools. However, in private schools, chaplaincy and guidance and counseling are at the core of running and managing learners.
So in case of, for instance, an indiscipline inside of a student, there's a process. You have maybe a student has gone out of the way, they have done that which is breaking one of the rules. What is the procedure? Number one, they will sit down with the guidance and counseling team, or with the school chaplain, or with the administration, and have a conversation. Are you aware that you should be accountable? Because that accountability makes them be responsible and know that in the future, I am also going to be in a place of authority. That's something we emphasize. So what do I want to experience in my day? That experience I want to have, then I give to those in authority. So I'll have a sitting with them, or the admin will have a sitting with the students, have a conversation.
Family and other social issues could be affecting many learners. And with claims that schools have not devised better approaches on how to reach out to learners and allow them to express themselves, could be the reason many of the impatient students have resorted to destruction of school property. Shadrach Miti, KTN News.
Okay, so that story by Shadrach Miti sort of paints a picture in terms of the conversation we want to have today. So is there a way that private schools are structured that sort of enables them to quell cases of indiscipline and enables them not to get to a point of destruction of property and school infernos across the country? So Jasper Ndimu, just listening to that story by Shadrach Miti, what comes to your mind when you take a look at what he's mentioning, that in private schools, the school chaplain, we equally have guidance and counseling systems that have been set in place. Is this the same case in public institutions? Perhaps you can start there.
First, thank you, Jesse, for having me. And Shadrach Miti has done a fantastic job as far as highlighting on the situation in private schools. And indeed, you look at private schools in the Republic of Kenya, I think a couple of them have gone on strike, but not at the magnitude of the public schools. Sure. And you look at even their systems and their structures. First of all, you talk about even the 100% transition, which has really eaten into the public schools, where you'll find a school that is meant to accommodate 600 learners is accommodating 1,200. That is double. And once you have such kind of case, you find that there is jostling for space in schools, and then with the lack of leadership, that means that the problem is going to be compounded. unlike in private schools, where most parents will take children in private schools because they believe that this particular private school, there is enough space for my son, and therefore my son is going to enjoy his stay at home. You look at the model, for example, of Starry Boys. You know, Starry Boys, even during the time of Griffins, it was more like a home. So when these particular children go to these particular private schools, you find that the private schools produce that particular good environment for these particular children. Even in terms of airing their concerns, they have very good structures of airing their concerns. In fact, the school directors or even the proprietors, they'll go to the learners and ask them, what are some of the problems you have? And they're going to fix those particular problems. On the flip side is a public school where sometimes the learners might highlight some problems. They'll tell the principal, and sometimes the principal can't do anything because he's under direction from the ministry. But in the private sector, once a problem has been picked, once a problem has been noted, it is going to be sorted out. Okay. So even the cases we have right now, even at the short term and the long term of it, the buck stops at leadership. Even some of these particular schools that are burning, if you try to look at them, you will see that a large extent there is a failure in leadership. It all begins and ends with leadership. I want to give you an example. I was in a particular school in Kisii County called Nyamagwa Boys High School, one of the schools that was raised down a few days ago. So when I was there, the principal used to meet us once every month, and we air out our concerns. So once the principal left the school is a shell of its former self. And the schools where the principal has gone have not had any unrest. So there is an aspect of leadership. Even the ministry can also look at building capacity for the leaders.
And that's interesting, because when you talk to perhaps parents out there, to stakeholders, who don't really know the issue at hand, they might mention that these students, these young ones, perhaps venting out because they're afraid of examinations. It's been a crazy year. We had the onset of COVID-19 and the terms being, you know, being so stretched out. It was a little bit too much for the students to take. Do you think this is a cause, perhaps, of student unrest?
Absolutely. The causes of student unrest are as many as the schools. I cannot really be simplistic and say this is the cause, but there are very many. But you look at even other Asian countries where the curriculum is also heavy loaded on the learners, but you don't see this kind of destruction. I think as a society, these particular children have not learned, or they are learning from us as how we are solving the problems. Where you find, I mean, you've seen people boxing each other. You've read a breaking story where an officer has shot some 6 people. It is unfortunate. So if these particular learners are looking at us and seeing how we are solving our problems, look at the politicians. It is insults day in, day out. So these learners are going to learn from these particular leaders. And therefore, as much as COVID came and the calendar is so squeezed, that might also be a catalyst, especially these students are facing a lot of pressure. They're preparing for exams and all that. So this is a cause. And that is why, for me, I'll advocate. You look at even some of the private schools in Kenya, Jesse Rogers. An example is Light Academy, where I taught for quite some time, is whereby you'll find there are weekly boarders. Then there are monthly boarders, and then there are termly boarders. There's a student who will come and say, for me, I'll get in school for a whole week. Ikifika Saturday, nenda nyumbani, narudi Sunday. So in such a way, you find that these learners are venting out, they're talking to their parents about even the status of the schools. The parents are counseling them. It really does not make sense containing these particular children for a whole term, and they're not getting an opportunity to get out. And then so there are other systemic issues where you find sometimes there are some things which don't make sense in the education sector. You find a learner lives in Kiambu, and that learner is a boarder at Alliance High School. Why can't that learner be allowed to be a day scholar? Or you find someone lives along Gong Road, and then that learner is a boarder at Lenana High School. So why can't we then also try to give these learners some opportunity to vent out? And also, as I began, about the environment in schools. Let us make the environment so comfortable for these particular learners, such that sometimes they miss even going to school. The case of Lenana, which was like a home. So make this school to be home away from home, such that the learners are comfortable.
Okay, and that means more infrastructure investment in these public institutions.
Yes.
So it's a whole wide approach. We'll definitely get into the thick of it, but at least we heard from the ministry that the exams this year will have a human face. So perhaps that will be incentive for this young ones.
No, but I think on that one, even last year they said the exam was going to have a human face, but when we saw the results, they were not pleasing at all. So I really, maybe it is a way of telling these learners to ease in a bit, but I doubt if they are going to relax the standards for these particular learners.
Well, we'll see about that even as we get closer and closer to those examinations. Allow us to take a short break, Jasper. When we come back, we'll definitely delve deeper into the conversation, but equally remember our very own Shadrach Miti, who's an education reporter, had a conversation with one Mr. Indimuli Kahi, who's the chairperson of the Kenya Secondary Heads Association. And